Today we have kindly an interview with Frau Emy Bonhoeffer, the wife of Klaus Bonhoeffer, the schoolmate or playmate with all the Bonhoeffer family in the neighborhood where she grew up, and one who has seen many events of the Hitler time herself when she was a young woman raising her own family, her husband working at that time as a young lawyer for the German nation, and eventually became a legal advisor or expert or lawyer employed by the civil airline.
Stop now. He was not a lawyer. What is a lawyer of the state?
Someone who is employed. For example, Hans von den Anye was a lawyer, but he was a civil employee of the state.
War als Jurist, Regierungsrat, yeah. He was an employee of the government, yeah. Yeah, no, he was,
Klaus was earlier a private lawyer, yeah, and only in 1938 then became an employee of the Lufthansa, the civil airline.
In 97, I think.
37, okay.
37,
the dates are not that important, but we know what this represents then. And we're pleased and grateful that you have let us come into your home today to have you speak a little about what you remember from these days in the family and in your own experience. Frau Bonhoeffer, you might just begin by telling a little bit about what you have just mentioned to me before we set up the camera, about what you were doing in these particular years. You were married to Klaus only in 1930?
In 1930, yeah.
And you had some small children in the Hitler time
yes,
to raise?
Yes.
And you were obviously, as every young mother, very much taken up yes, in terms of the time that you spent yes, in having to raise your young children during the time when Hitler first came to power. However, you were in the circle in which Klaus and Rüdiger Schleicher and Hans von den Anye and Dietrich Bonhoeffer and others were constantly
Ernst von Hammer, mein Bruder Justus Delbrück.
Yes, Justus Delbrück and so forth. You were not in a circle that was completely removed from the news of the day.
No, no. We knew something more than others knew, because Hans von den Anye was the right hand of the Justizminister Gürtner, and so we heard more than others.
The thing that I would be interested in is knowing a little bit about how you remember the days when Hitler was perhaps beginning to build a popular support of a larger sort, perhaps about the time of your marriage. Hitler was marginal for a while.
Marginal?
Not important.
Not important, yeah.
He was one of many.
Yeah.
Loud speaking, but not important splinter party leaders. Suddenly, however, about the time of your marriage, Hitler was no longer someone one could ignore, and one had to take notice of him. You just mentioned to me a moment before we started to record today a story about your husband's conversation with his mother?
With his mother, yeah.
From those years?
Well, maybe it makes clear how very early he recognized the danger. His mother said, national und sozial ist eigentlich genau das, was ich will. National and social, that's just what I want to have. And then Klaus answered her, Mama, die haben in den Kloaken angefangen und da gehören sie hin. They started in the toilets and there they have to stay, wie sagt man?
Yes.
Wie haben sie gesagt? They have to.
They have to stay there. That's where they belong.
Yeah.
Very good. But your mother-in-law was already a little taken in by the slogan, National Socialism.
Yes. That was very verbreitet.
Very much.
Many people saw a chance in it, because one must not forget that the situation was so miserable, with these millions of unemployed,
yes.
and the depression of mind after the contract of Versailles, and all these things that many people felt that Hitler was the last hope. And they felt, give him a chance. Maybe he can't do everything so as he wants to do. He can't do all what his ideas are, which he has written and described in his book, Mein Kampf, my fight. He can't do all that. Give him a chance. That was the feeling at first. But Klaus, from the very beginning, said, one should never give him a chance, because he's the devil himself, and he will draw not only Germany but all Europe in the ground.
Dietrich also used those terms, but later, to talk in his ethics about the Antichrist and so forth.
That was how the brothers felt.
And they felt that from the beginning, you could say. They were never taken in. No. They were never deceived by Hitler's slogans.
No, and they also do you know that Karl Friedrich von Weizsäcker has had the idea that there should be a possibility to use the ingenious talent of Hitler for propaganda and demagogy, to use the talent to the benefit of Germany. And he discussed that with his father, the old Weizsäcker, and the old father Weizsäcker said from the very beginning, no, there's no possibility, you can't have success with that. And that's the same like here in the family. These brothers felt from the very beginning there is no chance to use that talent for better purposes.
And many people thinking they could use Hitler in this way turned out to be very much regretting this later on.
Later on, yes. When they saw
only when it was clearer.
It was an error to have this hope. It is an error to have this hope.
But by then it was too late to control Hitler. He had power under his own control.
Yeah. Even Papen thought we put him in a Kinderwagen and wir setzen ihn in einen Kinderwagen und werden ihn schieben.
Yes.
Also the conservative groups thought we can manage him.
Yes.
We use his talent and shall manage him.
However, it was not to be.
No,
it's interesting what you mentioned, that it was Karl Friedrich von Weizsäcker's father who had some experience in such practical political affairs, who also was early warning against this strategy of expediency. We will use Hitler now for our purpose and later control or get rid of him when things are better economically or whatever. But Klaus said they are from the toilets and they must remain there earlier on.
You know the conversation which Christine von Donani had with the Hauptankläger in Nuremberg when he was when she was asked, you see, she was geladen als Zeuge, as a witness in the process against Weizsäcker, the father Weizsäcker. And the Staatsanwalt showed her a paper which he had underlined, signed, yeah, to push out the Jews from Rome, yeah. And the Ankläger said to Christine, you must agree that your husband would not have signed that paper. And she said, I don't know that, maybe not, but it costed him his life. From whom will you ask that?
So it was a remarkable family of which you were a part, because there was so much consistent, clear understanding of these conditions and facts from the earliest on, it seems to me. One has the feeling of your husband that he is not that he was a witty, clever, happy man. That he was able to make jokes and enjoyed them.
Yeah, good humor.
Yes.
Yeah, yes.
And for such a man to say, this comes of the devil, is different from some sober church figure who sees the devil in all things. That's very interesting to me.
Yes, he spoke very often and in very good pictures. I remember later on in 43 or so, I must look it up when it was, when it was going on, the killing and murdering in Auschwitz, yeah? I was standing in a line and to get some vegetables, and I said to my neighbors, now they start to kill and to burn the prisoners in the concentration camps. And the shopkeeper heard it, and she called Frau Bonhoeffer, if you don't stop to tell such fairy tales, you will end in a concentration camp too, and nobody of us can help you. And I said, well, it is the truth, and I feel you should know it. But when I came home and told my husband what I had done, he said, it's absolutely idiotically what you are doing. You please understand, the dictatorship is a snake, is like a snake. If you put your tail, your foot on its tail, it will just bite you. You have to meet the head. And that's what you cannot do and I cannot do. Only the militaries can do that. They have the arms and they have the entrance to Hitler. And so the only thing which makes sense is to convince the highest militaries that they have to make the coup d'etat.
To move. And that sometimes looked like it was possible. For example, when the Rhineland was reoccupied, the generals were very fearful because the German army was quite weak. In fact, it was a bluff, as we say. If the French and the British had quickly and strongly responded, Germany would have been whipped back to remove its troops. But the opposition of the military at this time grew up to a point, and then Hitler's bluff worked, so all the opponents lost all their power. They suddenly...
nothing is more successful than success.
Yes, nothing beats it.
He had so much success. They wanted to make the coup d'etat before he entered Austria. But then Austria was a flower war. They were received with applause, and so they felt nobody will understand in Germany when we kill him. We will not have anything else than a new Dolchstoßlegende.
A new stab in the back
Yeah.
story,
Yeah.
such as
Yeah, it's 1918. It's
yes,
18.
1918. And so, what would have been achieved at that time? It was only, perhaps, well, then there were several periods when the military seemed ready, or more ready, when General Fritsch was attacked, falsely accused of homosexual activity in 1938. Many were so offended by the way Hitler and others handled that accusation that they were very close to making a move then. But again, up
Success
and then
success.
down.
Yeah.
And only perhaps after the defeats in Russia was there a serious, sustained commitment on the part of enough in the military, in the opinion of many political analysts, to have really brought a successful revolution
Already
to be.
before Hitler entered Russia, Halder was ready to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But then Hitler offered him to organize the Feldzug into Russia.
Yes.
And then he was challenged, herausgefordert, and
Yes,
challenged in his military ehrgeiz,
Skills and
glory,
expertise,
and, yeah, chance for glory, chance for glory.
yes.
And so he was lost. At that time, before Hitler offered him that, he was very brave. He tried to win Brauchitsch for the plot.
Mm-hmm.
And Brauchitsch asked him, from whom do you know that? I will right away put them in prison.
Put them in prison, arrest them.
And then Halder answered very bravely, if you want to put any person in prison, then you will put me.
Because I am involved
That
myself.
was very brave.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Brauchitsch could have done it.
Now the military were necessary to any effort to overthrow the Hitler regime after about 1934, in the opinion of most people who know about this.
What do you mean?
No popular discontent with Hitler.
No.
From the grassroots.
No.
Without arms, without weapons,
Yeah.
without strength, such as the military alone, the military leaders alone had at their disposal,
Yeah.
could have opposed the SS and the SA and successfully carried through. It would just been fruitless. It would have been like cannon fodder. People would have just been mowed down. It would have, most people, unsuccessfully, without effect. Mm-hmm. What Klaus said about the snake is very interesting, because in a way he was taking the Führerprinzip seriously himself.
Klaus nahm das Führerprinzip ernst?
When he speaks about the snake, to oppose a state organized on the Führerprinzip, one must attack the Führer, not the rest.
Yeah.
In a way, he seems to me to be very realistic in his appraisal of what happened, as his assessment, his evaluation.
Bewertung.
Yeah, good. And he seems very clear, not only about what Hitler comes from and remains, but also about how to be effective.
Yeah.
It was very important to have the military, but it was also very important to have people like Klaus and Hans von Adani and others who were well informed about friendly voices in the administration, in the political offices, who could not just get rid of Hitler, but who could see that a Hitler regime was replaced by a regime which was more interested in preserving respect for law, the Rechtsstaat, which is what I think you said earlier your husband was most concerned about.
Yeah, that was the first and the strongest reason for Klaus, that he saw that Hitler destructed the concepts of law. And in this destruction, he saw a destruction of the basis of culture. Anyhow, yeah.
It's just like an animal, a horde of animals.
Yeah.
When there is no law
Yeah.
among human beings.
Yeah. Willkür anstelle von Gesetz. Wantonness instead of law. That is the catastrophe for a cultured state. That was his feeling.
And anyone who would destroy that comes from the devil.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
An interesting figure.
Yeah, yeah. I had a conversation after the war with a farmer in South Germany in a very strong Catholic area. And I asked him, how was it here? Did your priests tell you what was really going on, or were you just reading what the Völkische Beobachter said? And he answered, well, you must face, before Hitler came, my father was unemployed, my eldest brother was unemployed, my mother worked 8 hours a day for 1 liter milk, and we were 4 little children, nobody was at home. Then Hitler came, and my father got work, my brother got work, my mother could stay at home. Now what do you ask what the priest said?
Yes. I sometimes say that Hitler came to power because many factors all were present in one Anlage, and if you took away one or two, then the other things could not have made possible the Hitler state. If there had been a greater tradition and respect for the democratic state of Weimar, if it had not been part of the stab in the back aspect of the imposed, required guilt of Germany, makes them have to be punished by having the Weimar government set up in place of the Kaiserreich, and the reparations payment and the war guilt clause and all of these things.
At that time, in 1920-21, my husband studied in Tübingen and Heidelberg, and there are letters from him when, even in that time, he wrote to his brother-in-law in future, Hans Donani, at that time his friend. He described these terrible types of anti-Semitism and strong monarchic and absolutely defeating, heruntermachend the Weimar Republic, is a group of Jews and Quatsch Parliament, and not the least respect for what these people did. He wrote to his friend Donani, and Hans, das sind die Kerle, mit denen wir uns später werden auseinandersetzen müssen. These are the boys which later on will be to act with, mit denen wir zu tun haben werden.
We'll have to deal with them. Deal with them,
which whom will have to deal?
Yes, we must do something about them later. We have to eventually. They cannot be ignored.
Nur er hat vorausgesehen, dass das die Typen sind, mit denen zu tun haben.
And already Hans was aware, and Klaus was aware, then in the earliest 20s, of how anti-Judaism, the anti-Semitism anti-Semitism, again, could not be part of the honorable, civilized state. Yeah. Whenever this kind of virulent, sick hatred against persons is permitted, this already destroys a true society. So, was one in America in particular has a view of Dietrich, your brother-in-law, that he is a very pious man. I once asked Fabian von Schlabrendorf a question. After Dietrich's writing in prison had been published by Eberhard Bethge and become known